My book came out in 1997, and the next year they did DNA testing on descendants, and it corroborated what I said. There's a connection between the Hemings and Jeffersons, and no connection between that family of nephews who are accused, or said to have been the father of the Hemings children. So it's about how Black people's word then and now is treated in a diminished fashion. We're not credited if we're saying something that white people didn't want to hear. One of the most difficult things for people to understand is how it could be that a nation that saw itself as breaking away from tyranny and oppression could oppress other people.
She argues turning to history's great leaders is the best way to understand what she calls the American dilemma.
Anytime you have a diverse country with lots of different voices, with people having different understandings about the direction the country should take, you're going to have this kind of fighting, the 1790s. Political ideology is to get people to think about American history and to think about the fact that African American people have been here from the very, very beginning, have been part of this story. And there had been for many years an attempt to kind of write us out of that, or in sort of mainstream historiography, to write us out of it, or to put us in a particular box, in a place. You're there, but you're sort of like the flora and the fauna, like the deer and the other things. You're sort of wandering around. You're not really a part of it. They don't want another story in the mix for their children, because they want their children to believe the same things that they believe. There's like a catechism of white supremacy. There are things that you say in public that you know are not true.
Annette Gordon-Reed, thank you so much for stopping by to take some time to talk with us here at Baldwin Co. You doing all right?
I'm just fine. Thank you for inviting me. I had not heard of this place. It's wonderful.
It is wonderful, right? It's like a little personal Black heaven, you know? Yes.
Almost make me want to live in New Orleans.
Listen, I'm a practical liver. I've been here so much, but we're so glad to have you. Have you had, what's the best thing you had to eat so far?
The best thing I had to eat was a nice fried oyster salad. It was a salad with fried oysters on top. So that was really nice. I always try to get oysters when I come here.
That sounds amazing, actually. I didn't even know oyster salad existed. You really just put something on my mind. And we were talking earlier about you winning the Pulitzer, right? And just describing what that feels like. And I want to ask you, kind of outside of that and within that context, what does success mean for you?
Well, success means for me, I guess, that I have kind of fulfilled my mother's and my father's dreams for me. I mean, I think a lot of my life has been doing the things that I sort of expected or knew that they wanted me to do. And so it's been nice to be able to accomplish that. Unfortunately, my mother died before I, published my first book, but she and all of the hard work she put into me really contributed to that, and my father as well. So it means a fulfillment. I've sort of come full circle on something that a journey that I've been on since I was a kid. So that's what it really means to me.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit at dinner last night about like the idea of like be better than that kind of used to like permeate Black families and whatnot. When you just said that, made me think something I've said on social media is my mama told me to change the world like every day, right? So much so that I started believing I could. And simultaneously, my biological father not being there was a driving force in me wanting to like make him sorry he didn't take part in me, right? It's so excellent where he'd be like, wow, which he's pretty all right, man. We talk every day. I don't want to paint that kind of picture, but those are just some driving forces for success.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. My father lived long enough to see me write books and so forth, not the bigger success, but he saw me do these things. And so that was always gratifying to me that he got to see that.
Absolutely. Can you share a personal story or example that illustrates the resilience cultivated and passed down through the generations of your family?
Well, I think it's my parents' attempt to, and actually a successful attempt at buying a house, buying a home. We started out, she was a teacher, and my father had a small business, a store, and he also ran a funeral home for a time. and they saved their money and they bought a house. And that's always been a thing in the Black community, because the part of the inequality of wealth between Blacks and whites is the not, having a home, purchasing a home. And so most white people have their wealth in a home, and we don't have that. And so it's part of a generational thing that, and I think that working and saving for that and striving to keep it and paying off the mortgage is an example of resilience that meant a lot to our family. We've sold our family home, but that's what you do. After everybody's gone and the kids are gone and the parents are no longer living, that's what you do.
Do you feel like a sense of loss when that happens?
Oh, yeah.
About like we lost our family home that I grew up in, right? For various reasons, right? And I think about when I go home often that this is not my home, right? When I go in the home that my mom lives in now. And so, did you feel that? Oh, yeah, we felt a loss in doing it, and we postponed doing it. We probably should have done it earlier than we did, and probably got a better price, but there was nobody there. The character of the neighborhood had changed drastically. It was not any place it was not like what it was when I went home. So it wouldn't even be like going home in a way. But we still felt that twinge of, this is the end of something. There's no reason for me to go back to my hometown now. My mother and father have friends who are still alive. And so I've gone back for that, and I had a school named for me, so I went back for that. But other than it, there's no real reason for me to be there. So that's a twinge that you feel. It's a place that helped form you, and now you're not in that world anymore. And it makes me think a little bit about the amazing work that you've done. On Juneteenth. What is the name of the Hemings? The Hemings is a Monticello, an American family. Monticello. And you had, I think, 2 other books on, like, either Thomas Jefferson. I had another book about Thomas Jefferson, and I did, I helped Vernon Jordan, the civil rights leader and presidential confidant, write his memoirs, which is a completely different kind of book to do. But that's what kind of fascinated you about Sally and Thomas Jefferson? Well, what fascinated me was the fact that their son gave an interview in 1873 talking to a newspaper about being the child of Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings, and historians basically denied that and said he was making it up. And the African-American man, the other enslaved man who gave an interview and corroborated what he said, they said, oh, this is just a fantasy. They're trying to make themselves look good and, like being the son of Jefferson or whatever. And I could see how historians were treating what they said as a fantasy. But when Jefferson's legal white family gave an alternative story saying, well, the reason her kids look just like Jefferson is they're the kids of his nephew. And there was no support for that, nothing to corroborate that. And so my first book was looking at how historians looked at evidence and how they put a thumb on the scale for the white family and then just dismissed what they said. So I set out to show there was a lot to what he was saying. There was a lot to support what he was saying, and there was nothing to support this story about the nephews. And my book came out in 1997, and the next year they did DNA testing on descendants, and it corroborated what I said. There's a connection between the Hemings and Jeffersons, and no connection between that family of the nephews who were accused or said to have been the father of the Hemings children. So it's really not. I didn't see it just about that story of Tom and Sally. It's about how Black people's word then and now is treated in a, diminished fashion. We're not credited if you're saying something that white people didn't want to hear. And so that's what my first book was about. And so the next book, The Hemings, is about. The next book about this family was about the whole family, not just Tom and Sally. It was about her and her mother and brothers and so forth. I think about, so I was having a conversation with, a little bit of everyone, because I was thinking about changing my dissertation topic to like what archives do to like African American history.
Yeah.
Because who gets to hold those things often aren't the actual people that they're about.
Yeah.
And so I would imagine, so for instance, I was thinking about Morrison's papers are at Princeton and so on and so forth, and what that does in terms of creating like a narrative around our folks. Did you experience like those thoughts as you were like, digging through archives and talking to folks while you were doing that work?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's tough when you're writing about enslaved people to have to use some of the material that enslavers created. So you always have to read these things in a way that with an eye towards, who these people are who's saying this, and to be skeptical when warranted, and to do extra work to bear out what they're saying, because they're enslaving these people. They obviously don't have a sense of respect for them and care about them. So there's always, I was happy to be that Jefferson kept a lot of records and his family kept a lot of records, but it was good to have the oral history from the Hemings family. Madison Hemings is the recollection that I mentioned. That's not really oral history. This is a person telling his family. He's a part of it. So it's not like oral history is usually, it's someone down the line who's telling the family story, but he was a direct witness to this. So you have to dig deeper. You have to be skeptical of things that people say and try to find stuff to corroborate these stories. So I thought about the archive. They were not meant to be in the archive, right? Enslaved people, they were kept out of it. And uncovering it takes a lot. It's a lot more detective work than when you're just looking at people's letters. Which can lie too. I mean,
Oh, I read some interesting letters in like the Southern Misses archive.
Oh yeah.
They got some interesting stuff. Even and it goes back to like 1863, right around the time when they're like, all right, you gotta let them free. Can we like make a militia, et cetera, right? And like the precursor to the KKK, which is the Whitecaps in the area as well. When I'm thinking about like the Toni Morrison called it rememory, right? And I'm thinking about like the reconstruction of like history, and I'm thinking about on Juneteenth. Well, first of all, I want to ask you about like, so there's this concept and I brought this up yesterday. Claire Dieter's Monster, this is the fan's dilemma. It talks about like a certain level of pride that comes with like fandom. Like I know Jay-Z's high school, right? You were talking a little bit about like having that same pride with Juneteenth.
Yeah.
Right? Prior to it becoming like a national holiday and more celebrated in a loud fashion, I guess I'll say, outside of Texas. Can you talk a little bit about negotiating that for a little bit?
Well, what I first heard about people celebrating Juneteenth long ago, years ago, and I thought, why? Why would they be doing this? This is our holiday, because I grew up thinking it was Black people's holiday and Black Texans' holiday in particular. And then whites started celebrating it as well. It became a state holiday in 1980. And I felt, on one hand, you think, okay, so they recognize it. And on the other hand, this is something that's ours.
Yeah.
And then I realized later on that, if you see Juneteenth and the end of slavery in Texas as an advance in human rights, a step, not the end of it, but just a step, then you should want people to celebrate it. Not just us. It should be Black people outside of Texas. It should be white people. Anybody who sees themselves as an ally should celebrate it. And so I realized that that's kind of childish to want to keep things just to yourself. But it was a very intimate family, community. I remember we just sort of wandered from house to house, and everybody had, tubs of soda, and kids would drink too much and throw firecrackers, which I can't believe we had. Our parents let us have, which my kids would never have. But it was a different world. So I got over that was not a very mature way to see it.
Have you seen the Juneteenth? Was it high screen?
No.
Yeah.
I read something about that.
Never heard. Well,
those like the corporatization.
You mean all these terrible products and stuff?
It's like, but I mean, like you said, those like.
That's why you need DEI.
Yeah.
Somebody to say, don't do that. And that's not a thing to do.
And it's funny you talk about firecrackers, and then immediately when you said I can't believe we had them, it made me think about we would have firecracker wars.
Oh yeah, we'd throw firecrackers at one another. Yeah.
And I can't believe
be careful what your parents would say.
That's it. Like holding the Roman candle and put the dust on. And I think that just. I'm still feeling like the black cat on my arm. When I think,
well, you're so much younger than I am. They were still doing that. I
mean, I'm talking about more weeks, right?
Yeah.
When I think about on Juneteenth as well, there's something to be said about the prideful element of place, right? And the way that you treat Texas, and the way that you talk about all the different. Ethnicities and cultures that exist.
Yeah.
Right. What does place mean for you?
Oh, it means a lot. It helps define who you are, the kinds of things, the rituals you perform with your family, the play that you had with the kids in your neighborhood, the fights you had. It builds your character in a way.
Yeah.
And because Texas, I know Mississippi, you're from Mississippi, right? I mean, I'm sure you have a great sense of pride about that and connection. And the Texans are kind of it's a little extra. It's a little those maybe that's why I moved to New York. There'll be two places, that have that sense of self. I meet people from Texas, and you meet people from there, and you don't have to go very far before you find out they're from there.
Yeah.
I know all the people who are from Texas, and people from Massachusetts don't immediately tell you, I'm from Massachusetts or I'm from Ohio, But Texans is like that. So, and it's drummed into us. We take Texas history twice you have to take it in the 4th and the 7th grade. And then in high school, you can take it as an elective. So I had like 3 years of Texas history.
Yeah.
So it's kind of drummed into you from the time you're small that you're from this special place. And it makes people who are Texans feel that they are special. So that sense of place, and that's kind of outsized, it really is a little bit over the top. That sense of place defined me and made me grow up thinking that I was part of a special group of people.
Yeah.
And the book is really about what that means for a Black person, understanding that Black people came to Texas with the Spaniards in the 1500s. So they were there a long time before plantation slavery.
Yeah.
But my ancestors were brought over from Mississippi and from Alabama and Georgia into Texas. My earliest, I can trace back to 1820s. This is before Texas is still part of Mexico and not its own republic. It's certainly not a state. So how do you have a pride in place with a place where your ancestors were enslaved? I mean, what does Texas mean to me? What does Mississippi mean to you? How can you have that pride?
Yeah.
And working on the book, which I did during the pandemic, and I was it's a time where everybody was sort of thinking about a lot of stuff. Deep a lot of things is that, it's about your family.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the things that you share with people growing up, where you first learn that there are people who love you and the people you love, and the rituals and the things that you did. It's not about all those people who hate you.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't own it just because they happen to be there. So that's really what it's about, trying to figure out how do I reconcile those two things, the slavery and Jim Crow and the bad things with all the good things that I associate with family and love and struggle and thinking about the future.
Yeah, I think when you were just talking, I was thinking about when you're like, I'm sure you got like a sense of pride being from Mississippi. And I think it's interesting because you said you took these other classes that you're kind of taught about Texas history. We had like Mississippi studies or something like that, but I was like, oh my God, it's old, Mississippi's old. I don't want anything to do with it. And a lot of what I learned about pride and being from Mississippi, and specifically Natchez, came when I went to college. Everything else was about, I want to read. And like this whole idea of, I have to get away from here. And I think that is wrapped up in the history of slavery. Because Natchez, I don't know if you have learned or know anything about it, but it has tons of like plantation homes, et cetera, right? And
people have weddings there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you see that growing up, right? They're dressed in the whole Confederacy garb. Your grandma might be cleaning it out, and she had to wear a certain so and so. You know what I mean? Like that exists. It's still there, right? And so at first, right, I had like this wanting to kind of run away and escape, right? And then you go to school and everyone has this reverence for your city, right? And it makes you kind of go back in. And to your point of, it's about like family and the rituals you perform. Now I'm like, I fiend for those things when I go back, because I just find out so many cool things about them. And these are the people who like said, shake my head. I don't know if y'all do it in Texas, like when the baby comes, shake my head, rub my legs to make sure I wasn't bow-legged, right? I had no idea they were members of the Deacons of Defense, or that, they were in these traveling blues bands, or that there was a brothel there that to the late 90s, right? And so there's just a lot of cool stuff in terms of place. So places like, it means everything. And I think the work that like people do with nonfiction is very powerful in terms of place, because place is almost like, it's a setting, but it's also a character, right? In the way that it shapes the work. And in thinking about that, what weight does work like the work that you do have on shaping like political ideologies and or healing or furthering divides between folks?
Well, I hope the political ideology is to get people to think about American history and to think about the fact that African American people have been here from the very, very beginning, have been part of this story. And there had been for many years an attempt to kind of write us out of that, or in sort of mainstream historiography, to write us out of it, or to put us in a particular box, in a place. You're there, but you're sort of like the flora and the fauna, like the deer and the things you sort of wander around. You're not really a part of it. And one of the things that's happened over the past 50 years is the incorporation of people, of indigenous people, of African American people into the American story. And that changes things a lot. And I think part of the backlash that we're facing now about history is that there are people who don't want that. The people who are doing the weddings and all these kinds of things. They don't want another story, or a more inclusive, that word, story, in the mix for their children, because they want their children to believe the same things that they believe. And typically, you think of like my parents. I mean, surely they wanted me to believe some of the same things that they believed, but they also believed in education. They sort of knew that we were going to change, that there would be a new day, and they were hoping for that. But we're having a reaction against trying to use what we know about history to broaden the story.
Yeah, it's almost like a national cognitive dissonance, like of a whole like group of folks. We were talking last night with a brother, a white brother, who said that he didn't find out that it was illegal for enslaved folks to learn how to read until a few years ago, and we were, of course, flabbergasted. But then I was telling the people that we were at dinner with, I was like, that is a core necessity for white supremacy to succeed. A nation keeps its shape by the stories it tells itself, right, about what happened. And I think that's Dr. Monty Perry.
And she was speaking yesterday. Did you see her yesterday?
I didn't get to kind of see her here. She was here the other day. But when you think about the necessity of cultivating the story, right, and then what that allows you to think and move inside of, that's what I'm thinking about when I hear you say that, right? Because like, that is the controlling narrative of my city, right? You can come and get married here in an antebellum home, and, dress up. And it's almost like
pretend you're back in the good old days.
it's like and so that's like the prevailing story, like that you can come and get married here, you can dress up in the Confederate garb, and it's almost like we aren't there. Like there's a whole, and there just as much of wealth of information about the Black folk there, and or what we call, they obviously have a name there, they're called the Natchez Indians, right? The indigenous folks who are there. There's just as much a wealth of cultural information there for those that deserves to stand alongside them. Mm-hmm. And that when you were talking about like almost like this Americanism, how that's starting to be redefined, makes me think of something that Maurice Hollis wrote. I can't remember the name of it, but it was an essay about how his family members fought in wars. Yeah. And how they were like, the real Americans, they will never actually have that put on them. Yeah. That they are the actual ones, all of the people of color in the nation are the actual ones who believe in those ideals, and then the hegemonic powers that be circumvent those ideals whenever they feel necessary. Yeah. And that is Thomas Jefferson. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So when you think about some of the things he said about the inability of love in enslaved folks, while Simon probably is writing that. While Sally is literally tearing the room, it is almost. And
while he's doing things on the plantation that show that he clearly understands that that's not true. Yeah. Every single thing he says in the notes, you can point to something that he's doing at Monticello that he says, I can't imagine a Black person, the only plain narration, uttering a thought above plain narration, basically telling stories you can't analyze. Mm-hmm. Yet he had Black people, he asked Black people or made Black people do things at Monticello that required reason. Yeah. He made, George Granger is a Black man who was the overseer at Monticello. Mm-hmm. You can't be an overseer at Monticello without being able to reason. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there's like a catechism of white supremacy. There are things that you say in public that are not true. Mm-hmm. Your daily life tells you are not true. So it's a lot of it is about lying and lying to yourself. Listen. And I have no question that he believed that whites were superior to Blacks. That's a common, people believe that today. So that's not, you can't act like that's some, out of the box notion. But he certainly knew Black people were intelligent, and he knew Black people could, reason because he had them do it, and he wrote about them doing it. So there's a lot that's going on here that you have to work to maintain this stuff.
Yeah. So I guess a good question would be, what is the weight of like humanness on history? Because like he's constructing history, right? Yeah. He's like, there's a guy, it's a book called The Barber of Natchez, right? And he was previously enslaved, and he becomes a barber, and he then owns enslaved folks. And there's this one part of his historical, or the historian society, I guess I would say in large, who believes that he is recording this stuff almost like you record transactions in a checkbook. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that's what Thomas Jefferson is kind of doing in the recording of like his day to day, right? What is the weight of humanness, or what is the weight of humanness on history, and does it stand in direct opposition to the construction of American history?
Well, the weight of humanness in history is that you can't get away from it. Mm. It's actually there. It requires people to deny things, to lie to themselves. I remember reading some correspondence with a man in Virginia who had moved from one part of southern Virginia to northern Virginia, and he took a small boy with him, an 8-year-old with him, and an enslaved boy. And he's writing to his brother, and he says, this kid keeps crying every night. And I wonder, does he miss his mother? Mm. Yeah. And then he says, no, he doesn't. So you can see him in the letter. Mm-hmm. The only reason he raised the question because he knew the answer to that. Yeah. This is a person. This is a human being. And you can't take an 8-year-old from his or her mother and not have them miss their mother, right? And not know whether if you ever see them again. And yet he convinces himself in that letter. You can see him saying, I have to deny that. Yeah. But that letter is proof to my mind, that they know what's up. They understand what it is. Most of these people understand that they're doing that they are acting in an inhumane fashion and they're dealing with human beings, but they have other issues. They see themselves as better human beings, more important human beings, and their values and their desires matter more than other people. And they made that choice to do it. Yeah. And that's what I think people are, the backlash that I talked about before. And shame is not a strong word. It maybe for some people it's not a matter of shame, but there's certainly a huge discomfort with the idea of telling these stories because they know what their ancestors did and they know how people today will view that. Mm-hmm. And so they want to hide this stuff. The whole purpose of it is to deny the humanity or to put it in the minds. When you talked about the weddings and people not paying attention to the Black people, well, we've changed. I mean, we have a whole historiography now about slavery and enslaved people's lives. And ignoring that means you're trying to keep this story of the glorious South in place. Yeah. And you don't want any kind of additional stories, any additional narratives about people's lives. So it's a political choice to do that. Absolutely. It's definitely about politics. And they accuse us of being political, but that's a political choice to pretend that nothing has happened since hoop skirts and, the glorious South. And you haven't learned anything.
Yeah, it's like you do that and then you can go extra far.
Yeah, exactly. That's not where we are. We're in a different place and they don't want to be in a different place. They want to go back to that, but with antibiotics and, other stuff.
Yes. Well, Annette, it's been an amazing conversation. I want to thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you had an awesome time.
I did. I'm glad I discovered this place. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Mm-hmm.